Hello, everybody. Oh, I'm waving. Hello, friends. Jason of New Age Revolution Cave. You know the deal. I just got out of the pool with one of the children, and it got me thinking about, summertime with water. What was our experience with water like in the summer? Did you have a pool? Were there other means of keeping cool in the summertime? Let's talk about that. As we yesterday I did the video of random things that make me think of the 80s, and I think I'll turn that into a series of just, one item at a time, and maybe go a little bit deeper into the conversation about it. And tonight we're going to talk about how we kept cool in the summer. And for me, I remember a few things. I remember one of the houses that we lived in before my parents got divorced. I was 6. I had to be 6 or 7, probably 7. And I remember this. I remember that my dad bought us like a bigger pool that you could put up yourself. It wasn't like a blow up pool. You've seen them around. People buy these pool kits and they put them up and they're like 4 feet deep. Well, I think my dad bought a version of that, and we're talking 1983 here. And I remember telling a couple of the kids in the neighborhood that we were going to have a pool later that day. And for whatever reason, he wasn't able to put it together. I don't know if it had a tear in the liner. I assume that we just returned it the next day. I don't know. But that was like my first attempt at a pool. And I remember some of the neighborhood kids coming over with like towels draped over their neck being like, we're going to swim. And there's no pool. It didn't happen. Big letdown. Whatever. My grandmother had an in-ground pool at her house, and that was our swimming for summer. She moved into that house in 84, I believe, 84, 85, and right from the start had an in-ground pool, and that was like the greatest thing ever. We all knew how to swim. We all learned how to swim pretty early, and an in-ground pool is just a blast. And we always lived, until I lived with my grandparents, we always lived close to my grandparents. So going over there 3 or 4 times a week during the summer was absolutely common. And the great thing about the pool, the deep end was only 8 feet deep, but it had a diving board. And I remember there was always a rumor, and I don't know if it was just urban legend or if my grandparents just told us this, but they said that the previous owner broke his neck by diving into the pool off the diving board. And I think they told us that to try to deter us from diving. But we're all of 4 feet tall. The pool's 8 feet deep. The diving board, we dove the whole summer. We dove every summer. I was a diving expert by the end of the summers. The other cool thing about the pool is that it had a slide, one of those really tall fiberglass slides. And it had to be probably 12 feet up in the air. The ladder was probably about 12 feet, maybe even higher, maybe 15 feet. You had to climb the ladder and then kind of negotiate yourself onto the slide, and then down you go. But the deal with that was you had to liquefy the slide, or else you would rip every layer of skin off your body. So you had to get the green garden hose. You had to bring it up the slide. You had to wrap it around the top of the slide, the handles of the slide that kind of like slope over. You had to somehow tie a knot with the hose and let it run down the slide and wet the slide, or else you were a goner. And again, looking back at like parents or grandparents, they would refuse to do the dumbest things. Like we'd go over and my grandma would be like, no slide today. And we'd be like, well, why? I'm not hooking up the hose. And the hose is already hooked up. You just have to walk it over to the slide and climb up. And the kids could do it, but it was like, no slide today. We're not doing the slide. You're like, all right, we're not doing the slide. And that pool existed until I was probably 18. I think when I was about 18, they filled it in. That was a sad day. They buried the slide and the diving board in the hole and covered it up with dirt. So currently at that house, there's a diving board, a slide, and some Jenny Light beer cans buried deep in the backyard of my grandparents' home. However, we needed to be wet and cooled off when we weren't at the grandparents, and so that's when you started to see some of the really generic bootleg recreational things come in. The most generic and the most bootleg is, of course, the sprinkler. We have all ran through the sprinkler, as our parents would tell us to do. It's hot. We want to go to grandma's and swim. We're not going to grandma's. Go run through the sprinkler, and that's supposed to be fun. And you got the sprinkler. It kind of goes like that, and then it kind of goes like that. And as kids, you're supposed to run through it, and that's supposed to be some level of entertainment. We definitely ran through the sprinkler a few times until one of us would pick up the sprinkler and turn it this way and just kind of hose each other. The hose was also a summertime recreation. Of course, just spraying your siblings with the hose. As painful as the jet setting was, if you had one of those hose handles, you could set it to jet. And maybe it didn't even have settings. Maybe I think back then, if you put the nozzle on it, it would just be one setting. It would be like, firefighter hose, rip your skin off kind of deal. Now you have all the adjustable ones if you didn't have the handle, you just kind of chased each other around the backyard with a hose. And I remember we would always do it for some reason on fresh cut grass. And then we'd have like grass all over us. And then we'd fall in the grass, and then we would itch all night long. That was always a good time. Now another thing that there's two versions of this that blew my mind. The step up from the hose and the sprinkler, big step up, slight step down from the pool was the slip-in slide, right? That beautiful Whammo slip-in slide that I remember being very yellow and very long, and that was it. It was long and yellow, and it had a spot where you would hook up a hose, and then I think like water would somehow cover the slip-in slide, and you'd put it in your yard, and you'd run about 20, 30, 40 feet, and you would dive on the slip-and slide, and ideally, just go to the end like they do on the commercials. They're sliding and the water's splashing on them and they're having a lovely time. That again is another skin burner. Usually never quite worked out the way you wanted it to, because you really had to get a lot of momentum and you really had to fearlessly throw yourself on the slip-and slide. You really had to do like a head-first baseball slide. No like hesitation, no fear, just straight, But then one day I was watching a commercial and I saw this come up. I saw Crocodile Mile come up on a commercial, and I thought that was probably one of the greatest things ever. Because Crocodile Mile, I'm pretty sure, unless I'm thinking of another one, had a jump at the end. It had a pool at the end. Now the pool was about this deep, right? But you would slide down the slip and slide. I think you'd go through a crocodile's mouth, and then you would like hit this little speed bump, and you would land in the pool. And again, the pool is just an extension of the slip and slide. It's not like a pool. It's a divot. You would fall into a rubber divot filled with a little bit of water. But again, the commercials make it look like you're launching yourself through the air, splashing down into this pool. And it just looked like the greatest invention in the history of the world. And there were several variations of this. I think I remember one where you actually like ran and slid on an inflatable like bodyboard, which is, I don't know, I would think that would make you go slower. Now, I was always the kid that said, this just isn't working. Let's go get the dish soap. And we would spray dish soap all over our slip and slide. And then we would be soapy, soaking wet, sliding all over the place, tons of blades of grass all over ourselves. And, you know, that made the slip and slide way more fun is if you put soap all over it. I remember this thing, I'll never remember what it's called, but it was a whipper. It was like this little base, and it had all these rubber arms that hung off of it, right? And you'd put the hose in, and these rubber arms would go crazy, and they would spray water on you. Then I read that it was recalled because these rubber whips would actually hurt, and you'd get whipped in the face with these wild whips. I think that's fantastic. I don't remember what it was called. I don't think we had it. But I remember it. I remember the commercial. I remember thinking it's awesome. And then I remember hearing that it got recalled for injuring children. We have a theme park locally called Darien Lake. It's now Six Flags. And starting at maybe around age 13, 14, we started going there occasionally, maybe every other year. And we experienced water slides for the first time. And those were amazing, especially because I had never experienced it before. And I was satisfied with the lower level, almost kiddie water slides. I was completely satisfied with that. I did not need to keep walking up the stairs to the mega water slides. I was fine with the smaller ones. That was a great time. But now we've had 3 pools. We've had, when we bought the house, it had a pool that hadn't been open in years, and it was aluminum, very, very rusty and old aluminum. We had that tore down. We got another pool, and it collapsed in a windstorm, and then we got a third pool, and that's the one we're working off now. And the kids enjoy it. This is not something that kids have grown out of. They still continue to swim like we did as kids. They will swim in 70-degree weather. They will swim when the water is 65 degrees. They will swim when it's uncomfortably cold. And I used to as well. I would dive in, I would jump in, whether it was cold or not. I didn't care. And now I've turned into an old man where it literally takes me 5 to 7 minutes to get in the pool, because I go one step on the ladder at a time. I overreact to the cold. It actually hurts. I'm not happy. Then I get in the pool and I don't want the water to, and I'm kind of tiptoeing around and I'm yelling at the kids for splashing me. I mean, I've literally turned into, an old man. I don't want to be in the pool anymore. So anyway, that's summertime memories of water, of how we cooled ourselves off, and all the fun little gimmicks that they came up with. Slip and slide, crocodile mile. My goodness, what an invention! I don't ever think I did crocodile mile on eBay is expensive. I've looked for it. It's expensive. It goes for like $150. I have not found an original Whammo slip and slide. I haven't looked. I'm not really buying stuff anymore because I really got no place to put it. I could. That's probably something that I would look for, maybe a slip and slide, a Whammo. But you never know what the date. You got to really make sure it's from like '85, because they've had slip and slides my kids had one a couple of years ago, and they didn't really like it. They didn't get enough momentum, right? They were a little afraid to run and slide, especially Liam. He would just fall, and it was hilarious to just watch him just stop. Anyway, summertime water memories. What are yours? Put them below, and maybe we'll do this daily or every other day. We'll just pick a, kind of like a whatever happened to, but just things that spark the memory, just things. All of your responses to my last video made me think about stuff. Kool-Aid. Maybe we'll talk about Kool-Aid and Kool-Aid stands, lemonade stands, some of the memories that I have with that. I don't know. We'll talk about a bunch of stuff. That's all. Thanks for hanging out with me. Good night. Now.